that when people
Perfect.
start messaging.
Sounds good. Um, anyone walking in?
No, just checking. Yes, I think it's understood.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. My name is Spencer Levine. I am the president of REO Development Services. We are working with the landowners, and we are part of the development team that will be developing the Mandarin Oriental resort and residences. And really, we wanted tonight to happen as we start moving forward. I know it's been a long-awaited project. I know there's been a lot of time in between certain steps at this point. But as we get going, we want to make sure that we are sharing information, current plans, and that we do have an ongoing line of communication with the community, with the island, and with the overall team. Projects of this size and scale obviously can't happen in a vacuum. So we want to make sure that that information's out there. I'm a big believer, and our team is a big believer in transparency. The more information that's out there, the less that needs to be created on your part, and we're happy to share that. So I'm just going to cruise through a presentation, and after that, we have some questions that have previously been submitted, I think, and you can also take questions and have a discussion and really just see what the next steps are. So with that, go through a little bit of project background, where we are with the current design, kind of just some high-level project investment, economic, public benefit type things. And that's really that this presentation was put together for tonight, but also to use on obviously the broader island discussion too, not just about communicating with the local community. Preliminary conceptual project schedule, so that kind of pairs, and some of you noticed the board up there with some of the work that's ongoing now and where we're going, kind of conversation, next steps, and a bit of a Q&A. Project background, I think most people are aware of the overall project. But the overall project is 67 acres. Of that, less than 20 are being developed in the initial phase now, and we can talk about that. The project's been developed over, as you know, the design and the entitlements and the approvals that are in place have happened over the course of many years, and in putting together those packages and building the design, we did a great amount of site analysis. One thing, I always have this image on the right available because what's unique about the area is the topography. And we'll talk a lot about sustainability, and I know there are some questions out there about sustainability. But the fact that we are on a natural topographic high point relative to other places on the island is actually an existing benefit to the overall sustainability goals as well. Project team, we have a mix of both on-island professionals, contractors, as well as kind of more international group. Mandarin Oriental, as the operator of the project, is a global brand. It has a great global appeal and is a great resource to the project. Working very closely throughout over the last several years, over the course of the project, really, with the Cayman Islands government. Another company, Capital Management, is the landowner. REL, I'll talk a little bit about us. We are a 43-year-old family-owned and operated soup to nuts development firm. We actually grew out of an architecture and land planning firm. I'm actually a landscape architect, not serving as a landscape architect on this project, but it enables us to look at projects and implement projects at a very different scale and at a very different focus on what's important to those projects. And we are working on behalf of the project to help execute it. We don't do studio projects, desk projects. We don't work on projects that we don't believe will get completed and delivered. So this is an opportunity to do something. This project is, you'll hear more about, but it's a great project that we know we can work on and deliver with everyone in this room, with the government, and with our consultant and contractor team. Working very closely with Arch and Godfrey, Arch is here tonight as well as Andrew McBean and some of the other members of the team. We believe in the importance of really making this a very localized approach to building this project. We've been working with Arch and Godfrey for several years now to make sure that we're really targeting the design and the constructability of the project, and we're working through something that can actually get implemented. And of course, Andrew Gibb as our local architect of record and resource. Just some high-level project data, and one thing that I'll mention now is what we're looking to actually put together, and we've done this on several projects across the world really, is we will actually be developing a website that will be accessible to everyone that is completely independent of marketing and sales and all that stuff, and is truly just focused on communicating the information about the project. That website, those that RSVP tonight, RSVP to buildbeachbay.com, info@buildbeachbay.com. That will actually be the website, and will be developed just for that purpose of conveying information. So this presentation, when we do get the website up and running, will actually be posted to that too. So you'll have the ability to access this information. What we'll also do on that website is on it's either every 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be posting look-ahead construction schedules. What are the major activities that you might be aware of that are going on throughout the process? Also things as we get closer to operations, opportunities for employment or training or really just the technical aspects of the project will be posted there. But high level, the main portion of the resort did receive planning consent back in December of 2019. We'll talk when we get to actually, as we move forward here, about why things take so long. And projects of this scale and complexity take time to get the right solution. So that planning consent was granted in 2019. As I mentioned, that first phase was actually 19 acres as approved, and then an additional 2.5 acres, but that's actually been scaled back at 19 slightly, and I'll talk about that today. It's a total of 91 rooms, hotel rooms, and there's actually 25 condominium units approved in that first hotel area, but we're actually only building 20. And we filed for building permit last year in 2021, early 2021, and it took over a year working with the VCU to get our building permit issued for the hotel towers, and that was issued in April of this year. So we are shovel ready. We'll be looking at talk through schedule later on how the next steps here. So the current design, we do have a big printed master plan over behind the snacks as well, but I put it up here. The master plan for the project for the hotel and the initial residences focuses really around the piece of land that was previously developed or planned to be developed. And that's the area that is right now cleared outside. But it took time to get to this station. As I said, projects, the first iteration or the process to get here is not going to use. If anyone listened to the Cold Hard Truth this morning, you might hear some of the things. It might be somewhat redundant, but we always talk about how development projects are not a loaf of bread. You don't just mix a bunch of ingredients together in a bowl, put it in the oven, and it comes out an hour later as a project. The process takes time. It's a lengthy process, and it also includes a lot of participation and a lot of different opinions and bodies weighing in on it. What I will say, and it'll come up again and again throughout discussion, is that the process here on island really does work. There's a tremendous amount of back and forth throughout the process with planning, with the CPA, with DOE, and other authorities having jurisdiction over the project, as well as opportunities throughout that process to participate. And I hate the word object, but that's actually the word that's included in the process, but to object to what was going on. We did work through all those processes, and we've gotten to this plan. But that plan is, as I said, not without a lot of process. And some of the things that you'll see today are reactions to the feedback that we got throughout the process. A big one was obviously in the planning approvals that were granted in 2019. We did have on the plan, let's see if this laser works. No, it does not. So, this is the 2019 plan that was approved. Along the beach zone here, beyond the setback, but along the beach zone, we did have what we were calling the Mandarin rooms, as well as the pool element did stick out there. We used COVID to our advantage. We obviously, a lot of people had the question of why things taking so long. The reality is the last 2+ years, the island has been locked down. The workforce has been unavailable on it. Materials are unavailable, and now we are obviously all working through a global logistics conundrum. But we decided to take the time through COVID, since we couldn't build, and use that time to really refine the plan. So some of the things that you'll see today, first off, the big one is we removed all those rooms down near the beach, and we redesigned the pool and pushed it back further. That was something that we decided to do, I think, coming from my landscape architectural background, it was important to us. We really reapproached the design of this area as this coastal dune landscape. And you'll see in some of the renderings around and in the plan as we go back to it, that this is now a landscape buffer that exists along the setback and along the beach area. It's important to note that no construction or development is going beyond the extent of what that existing retaining wall is down there. So there's no construction on the sand anymore. Another thing that we did was we heard a lot of feedback through the planning process and during this Central Planning Authority hearings about the concerns related to rock removal and excavation. We were able to, again, use those 2 years, and we actually were able to redesign how the building sits in the landscape to minimize that excavation. We were able to reduce the amount of excavation and rock removal by over 80%. Obviously, this has, everything else that has a monetary benefit, or impact. And this was something great for the development, but it was also something great for our construction process. It shortened the amount of time that will be in the ground, and also, obviously, by a factor of 80%, reduced the impact of rock removal and excavation. We've actually built a model. It is on the water, on its way here, but I took some of the snapshots of the model because it's a helpful tool to better understand how we're now addressing some of these areas. There's kind of no better way to see it than a physical model. Renderings don't do what this can do. But in these pictures, you can see now how we're addressing that landscape buffer and that rolling topography, and you kind of see it here too. Again, that setback with limited impact onto the beach or onto the sand area. So this is our overall. The one on the left here was the approved master plan of 2019, and this is the modified master plan of current day. So this is the consolidated plan with the modification of the Mandarin rooms. And again, I'm going to cruise through this. We'll have access to it later and we can answer questions. The next big move, and this was a real big one. We believe strongly, again, going back to some of the underlying principles that REL tries to follow in all of our developments, we wanted to focus on the idea of low impact development and really trying to consolidate the construction onto the areas that were, wherever possible, that were already previously compromised or already previously developed. So we were able to take the event center and spa that used to be on the north side of the BP40 landmass here. So this is a little plan, a little pull-up. We took all that programming and consolidated it down into the resort core in a series of low-rise buildings, but further reducing the amount of land that needs to be impacted in this phase. It also has great efficiency in operation of the resort, and will help by eliminating that need to continuously cross what is being designed, engineered, and built as a roadbed, an NRA roadway that could be dedicated if and when the government chooses. So again, that before and after shot, because this one's really telling. This was the before approved plan, the 2019 plan with the banquet and spa up here on the north side of BP 40, and here it is today with the current development plan. We think it provides a better development overall, but it also starts to address some of those, or continues to address some of those key sustainability goals of the project and the operator. Flip through here, we have some renderings of some of these structures that we're looking to develop. This is the arrival lobby building, low rise, pretty simple and understated architecture. This is in the lobby. So I paired these up with pictures of the model so that we better understood how the context works. This would be that arrival area that was shown, and then looking out through there towards the water. This is, I believe we're calling it the sunset bar, or at least for planning purposes. It does face the sunset, and it does also, if you turn around, face the sunrise. So, that's here. This is the central court area. This is the fitness and adult pool. This is another snapshot of the model of the of the main hotel campus area. This is Beach Bay Road coming down here to the proposed rotary, and this is BP 40 that maps up that way. View out from the building. Back at the building, you see that rolling landscape and how we're now addressing the foreground here. So view out of the unit. So high level, and again, this will all be available on the website, and it's publicly available information. We are looking at approximately a 30-month construction schedule. And during that time, all of the typical fees associated with construction workforce and through construction duties and fees would be paid, and that would be an increase to the Cayman Islands government revenue. Upon completion of the project, and this is something that we should talk about and something that we spoke about on the radio this morning. As this gets completed, there's an opportunity for approximately 300 to 330 employment positions to operate a project like this. In addition to that, there's all the associated tourism accommodation taxes, departure taxes, and what really is a tremendous gain to the overall Cayman Islands government revenue is the significant stamp duty that is generated by the sale of the residential component of the project. We do anticipate during the construction process approximately 500 construction jobs. We actually had a meeting today where we were discussing how those jobs will be filled. Our preference always is to localize the approach, as I mentioned. To date, all of our we have been focusing our attention on using local contractors, vendors, and engineers and consultants. So things like, I'll show you pictures, or if you've been to the site in the last 3 weeks, we've been doing enhanced geotechnical studies to really understand what the underlying rock conditions are. That's all being done with local forces, with local engineers, our geotechnical engineers, local civil engineers, local architect of record is local, and we're really trying to, and from an efficiency standpoint alone, it just makes sense to do it that way. In addition, there's a tremendous amount of professional skilled teams available here on island. So just to give you an idea, and this is super high level, but the level of investment versus what that kicks off in the anticipated stamp duty. In the initial phase of the development, which is everything that's entitled and approved to date, It's an almost $500 million investment on the development team's part including design, construction, and operation and starting. That generates, in that first phase, upwards of $23 million in stamp duty that comes directly to the government. Overall, it's almost $1 billion development, and that's over many years, with an anticipated $115 million in stamp duty. And that's a direct stamp duty payment to the government. It's not something that is it's not negotiated anywhere. It's a fixed fee. Some of the additional benefits that we've been talking about, and we were talking earlier about the opportunity to potentially, the next time we have the Mandarin Oriental team on island, or we can set up Zoom sessions and things like that. It's important for them to discuss their commitment to both the locations as well as their brand overall. And they have some unbelievable sustainability goals. Like, they're the first hotel operator to go completely plasticless. And they set that goal back in 2019 for 2021, and they've achieved it. They have programming in all their hotels that really focuses both for adults and children. Their children programs are actually designed around the environmental uniqueness of the properties that they operate. They have, to this day, been like the loudest voice in the room when we're talking about the incorporation of turtle-friendly lighting and turtle-friendly glass, which we have. They fully support those missions, and actually they probably support it even beyond what can be accomplished in the construction phase and in the operation phase. But they're also bringing that this development will increase the depth and breadth of the luxury tourism offering in Grand Cayman, and that's important. The Mandarin as the operator will enable Cayman to target new markets. Also, they have a global reach, and this is important. The goals that have been discussed about increasing stay overnights and high level of spending on it. Those are, it's nice that the cruise ships come, but they don't spend like a stay over tourist, and they're not looking. They're obviously not looking for luxury accommodations. And one of the things that we think that's very important is that this project will be and is a major catalyst further enhancing the Go East initiative. And this project has been in the works for a long time, and has really, its inception starts closer to when the Go East initiative was announced. And as I mentioned early on, the natural characteristics of the site being a high point on the island, having that natural topography, that natural protection from storms and other climatic change, those are all things, as we watch the impacts of climate change on 7 Mile, the reaction to that is to seek opportunities to have smart growth and smart development, and build where building is appropriate, or where the topography enhances it or supports it, or where the access supports it, or where we can decrease the amount of commuters into Georgetown and help the traffic situation by providing a major employment opportunity here. These are all things that come into play with the Go East initiative, but also just really factors in how we've designed and developed the project. So talking about kind of what we've done and where we're going with the project. So the left side of the screen here is pre-2018, what the beach looked like. And obviously always a beautiful sanctuary, but the beach had been, the jetty had been hastily replaced, and I wouldn't even say restored. Those boulders were hastily placed after Ivan had decimated the jetty structures. They were placed in a way that actually created a non-environmentally functioning swimming bank. So when we did our initial maritime studies, we brought in some of the leading coastal engineers in the world who actually work very closely with the DOE on other projects as well. And they did their studies of the bathymetric contours, which is the underwater topography, and all the living, the life, and found that that swimming area wasn't actually supporting any kind of maritime health. And in addition to that, we were actually losing more sand than we were accreting. So because of how those rocks were hastily put back and how the openings were arranged, it was actually flushing the sand out of there. So in 2018 and 19, we underwent this engineering project and worked closely with the DOE in planning to get what you now see and have enjoyed down at the beach in place. It took quite a bit of time, effort, and was actually built with approximately $2 million of private money to get that into its operating condition now. And you'll notice the sand line has completely changed, the way that the sand reacts, the accretion, and how the whole system functions now is totally different from the pre-2018 condition. In addition, we've, over the last several months since the island has reopened, we've been making an effort to do beach cleaning on a regular basis when we can. Obviously not during turtle nesting season or anything like that. Really to just support and enhance the enjoyment of the overall area. So that's something that's been going on. Yeah, I know there's been a lot of conversation about the enabling work that we've been doing out on site, and what I thought, going through the files and just kind of better understanding the site and the process for myself, I stumbled upon a couple pictures from the 2008, what was intended to be a development of the property in 2008. And what we found was actually the area that we are impacting with the current development was actually the area that was previously cleared for that 2008 development. And it was completely cleared at that point. We have, the work that we've been doing has actually been clearing overgrowth and clearing away a lot of abandoned construction works. We found footings for the crane, we found all kinds of good stuff. And that area is really all encompassed in what we've been doing here. Another thing that anyone who's been to the site since December has noticed is we did begin to take down some of the existing condominium buildings that were on site. This was the condo building that sat along the beach, and we demolished that in December. And what's important here is actually that there's nothing being built back in this general location. It's all being pushed back somewhat in the approved plans. This is that site preparation, what I talked about out front. I mentioned early on that we've actually undertaken a in-depth geotechnical analysis of the site, and that's really, we have our basic understanding of what the site is and what composes it and how we should build the building, but by doing this additional level of study, we can know things about how we can minimize the impact when we do build the building. How can we minimize the footings while still attaining all of our code compliance guidelines, and really just knowing everything we can about those subsurface conditions. And those borings are being done along the center line of the proposed buildings. In addition, we did some exploration to better understand our options for cooling and heating, going along with both our goals as well as the operator's goals for sustainability, whether geothermal can be explored or what, and we're still waiting for the results of some of that. Overall schedule, and again, we'll put this on the website when we get it up and running, but pre-construction work and site enabling work is going on now. We anticipate a true mobilization for the start of construction in late summer, so hopefully the August time period, which will allow us to buy out any of our major trades, work with community and government to try to maximize employment opportunities or involvement in these early days for some of these larger superstructure works, as well as it will kind of put us, the intent is that this will give us an opportunity to work through some of the global logistics, as I called it earlier, the global logistics conundrum, but kind of the global logistics problems. Everything obviously has to be shipped onto the island, and the more that we can get out in front of and buy early on, the better off the project will flow. So we're using these months now to really focus on some of that early procurement work, some of that procurement around the globe of materials and finishes and things like that. We anticipate really it's a completion for opening fourth quarter 2024, first quarter 2025. So once things get going, we'll be updating along the way. As I mentioned, we'll be providing those construction updates, and we do. That's kind of our timeline right now. As I mentioned, it's about a 30-month construction period. So next steps, I've pretty much mentioned them all along the way here, but we're going to be setting up that website so that people can access the information. As I said, really want to change the dynamic of the communication process and make sure that we're transparent in what's going on the site, the processes, the construction, and just kind of overall information about the project. So that's going to be set up. We intend to break ground, and that as we get closer to that, and as we formalize and finalize some of those details, we'll be making sure that that information is out to everyone. But we break ground in August. And really, we want to continue to make sure that the information's out there. And I will say, I encourage everyone to use the email address that was used for RSVP tonight as a source of information too. So if you have a question, we probably have an answer. I might not have the answer tonight to the question. I might not have the answer, period, but someone on the team should have the answer. So we'd like to get into the habit of making sure that if there's a question out there, we're answering it, and we're answering it with you, rather than letting kind of those questions take on a life of their own. So we should look to use that. We'll also create a comment form, a inquiry submission on the website, which will be another great source. And we've done this on other projects, as I mentioned. I can share some of those, but they become a good source of communication. So with that, I think that's pretty much the presentation. So I would open the floor to questions, comments. I do, early on there was a question, I think I answered most of it, but about the sustainability goals and the environment. But I think we can open it up to questions too. Anyone's got anything?
Yeah, I see the government, I see the benefit to the government, they're getting lots of money for that. But as someone who lived here, and when I moved here, it was completely zoned residential. What's my benefits to this place other than having this massive place that's going to limit access to the beach? I haven't sold my soul, but the government sold the soul of Cain by proving this. And that's how most of the people in this area feel. You had a chance to actually be open about this 2 years ago when there was a meeting down at Savannah School and chose not to show up.
So I want to talk about today and moving forward because I think it's important to talk about
how you acted in the past doesn't really give us much confidence.
So how certain team members may have acted in the past, I think, is probably honestly it's not relevant to how we're moving forward. I think what is important is that the information is here.
It's very relevant because, as you said, 2 years have passed, which we have not been involved in.
And I
Yeah,
think.
if you didn't live within 300 yards of
What
the
is the
property, you had no
benefit to
say in
this
the planning
neighborhood?
board.
Exactly.
Your project will affect this whole
I'd like to
community.
know, what is
It's
the
going to
benefit?
affect all the way down Beach Bay Road. There's going to be increased traffic because of this. There's going to be all
So the
sorts of
information, I think it's
issues from
important to note that those studies have been done by the NRA and others, and they are all part of the
They're not
planning
showing the
process.
infrastructure to us, which is going to impact us.
So the
residents.
The residents, the traffic up and down Beach Bay Road. You're not standing there, you're not doing this every morning like we are.
no, and I'm happy
So
to
Three
show
showing
you.
years.
into the infrastructure.
3 years of construction, which we're going to have to live with, in an area which is a valley, and you just about hear any kind of construction, whether it's here or there or there. So 3 years we're gonna have to endure this.
And I
So
think.
what do we benefit from this specifically? Can you answer that question?
Yeah, I think the benefit comes in one, there's an overall benefit to the island. I think what's important.
We want to know the
Here.
benefit
I'm
of each
with
day.
it.
Okay,
So I think what is a direct benefit is the fact that Mandarin Oriental as a global operator will be developing this, the home and land values are, I mean, it's a tremendous benefit.
living here the way it was an amazing benefit to all of us in this
Yeah,
neighborhood.
but the financial
And the
benefit
reason
to my
being
property
is
value
because
doesn't make as much,
We endured.
doesn't mean as much to me as to what you're destroying
We
to
endure
build this
an
thing.
hour or more of traffic every morning, every night, just to be
And-
away from the 7 Mile Beach and the traffic. Area.
I would like to understand, and I think it's worth the conversation, how height of a building impacts sustainability. And I think it's worth the conversation because I think what's also important, and we talked about this a lot on the radio this morning, is you know, the information and the exchange of this kind of discussion is important, but I think, you know, to say that height impacts sustainability. No, because I'm telling you, what I think is important to.
Sorry, sir, I live just over there. Can you tell me how tall a wall I need to build so I can walk around in the nude in my back garden?
We actually, I think we addressed your concern during the original Central Planning Authority. No, I think we did, because remember, this development is complete, this is a single loaded corridor development with views out to the water. We do not have views on the backside. The intent of the design was to keep people focused out towards the water.
So there's
So
no
the
windows
back of the
out
building
back.
has no windows?
No,
No
it's the, guys, come on, let's not put words in here. What I think is important to understand is the building has been designed around the views to the water. It's not to say there's no windows to the back of the building, but there's not primary views, there's not opportunities, there's not areas that are designed to look in the north direction.
Well, there
You don't
goes
have-
our tranquility of going to a beach without a huge crowd of people around us.
Well, they allow us on the beach.
So, yeah, let's
Well,
discuss that.
let's reflect on what's going on in 7 Mile
That's
Beach.
what I want to know. What
Us
benefits-
locals are not allowed to use the beach anymore,
Yeah.
right? Plain and
There
simple. So are we going to be restricted from accessing it, or do we have to jump off the bluff, which was initially proposed
No,
in the
so,
first presentation?
so
No, but that was.
I don't know who proposed that, but what I will say
You were
is
there.
there are regulations that are in place that we have now conformed to. That the plans that are approved reflect the required amount, actually exceeding the required amount of access to the beach, utilizing Beach Bay Road that is mapped down to the high water mark, to the beach. And an extension of that, the access to the beach is not compromised. I mean, we wouldn't have
To the high water mark.
we would not have
That's it.
put in the $2 million of private investment, our money.
You know what,
into
that
this
beach
source.
was good for 50, 60, 100 years before you guys came and researched.
So I will tell you that we
It
do
was
have,
in existence.
but
You keep right.
That was that beach, that was a marine nursery. There were all kinds of young fish, octopus, you
There,
name
so,
it.
there
I don't think
were,
there's anything there now.
and,
And it
we
depends on the time
have,
of
we
year.
have plenty of reports on what the existing, the marine biology was prior to the improvement.
I'm talking about what I saw with my eyes.
No, I know, I have
What
too.
saw with our eyes.
And the,
Not what some marine
the-
biologist is not even from here says.
the marine life that exists around and in the jetty now is pretty phenomenal.
Like that.
And so I think one of the things that we want to get across, and that is really the purpose of this meeting and this communication, is that you don't have to doubt anything. If there's a question, provide the question and we'll happily provide the information. We want to make sure.
Yeah, this is lovely, but you still, can you please just, one of our major concerns is our enjoyment of the beach. Are we still going to be able to enjoy
Yes.
the beach?
Up until how
My
much,
son-
and it's only to the 12
High water mark.
high water mark?
Well, no, actually, we do have a right. I've got a little thing here that actually says the guideline for owners and managers of beachfront properties. And it actually says that members of the public have the right to use any part of Cayman beaches for recreation, even though part of the beach being used is on private property, i.e. that is above the mean high water mark.
And
So I encourage you all to have this, because when you guys develop, if any of your security people kick us off the beach.
Yes,
let
thank
us
you.
know.
I don't think, I don't think you've heard me propose that at all today, nor have
No,
you.
you haven't, but
on-
you come forward and nobody is listening to us, and it's too late, because.
Exactly, and what we're telling you is our experience on the various resorts on 7 Mile Beach. So why is this going to be different?
So please can you scroll back to the image of the beach, which has Beach Bay Road, and please can you show us where the public are allowed to walk on the beach?
And private.
Thank you.
Next steps. Right, go further back a bit and show us where we can drive, where we can park, and where we can walk on the beach.
I don't believe driving is permitted on the beach.
No, but
No,
yes,
no,
down
no,
Beach
no,
Bay
no,
Road.
So you can drive and park, there's nothing that's changing.
Drive in the park.
Drive and park. There's
Go down
nothing
Beach Bay Road.
changing to Beach Bay Road, there's a parking lot there.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
And
where,
that's actually been improved recently.
Yes, and I agree.
And
And
where
in
can
addition
we
to that, we'll be providing I believe it's a 12-foot landscape right away that's also pedestrian access down to the beach in that way.
We can still
So-
walk down there anyway.
So-
But just show us.
But-
show us where we can walk on
So
that
it's
beach.
gonna be Cayman Force private beach then, right?
Because also, what you guys are also touting on your Facebook page is that this is gonna be a private exclusive resort, and that from what we've seen with a lot of Mandarin resorts throughout the world, and speaking to lawyers that have been to places and stuff, that they said that these are exclusive resorts where locals cannot go onto the beach.
All right, so
So-
again, kind of hearsay. I would love to, and I offered this up on the radio this morning. I think the opportunity to get Mandarin, they will participate in conversations like this as we go forward as the operator. They are not looking to exclude anyone. In fact, we talked about the fact that this is a destination resort. The restaurants in at this development, the public spaces, the intent is that people come and use them and use things closer to their home. Use restaurants. You don't have to go into Georgetown or onto 7 Mile to go to an additional restaurant.
But not many people will be able to afford it because of, cost of living here is so crazy.
Well, because-
Sorry, and you're unfortunately getting the wrath of everybody here.
No, and I appreciate that, and I hope, and you don't know me, but you will know me, and I am sincere, and I
But you
truly
still haven't
believe.
answered my question.
So the access
What
is
is
the
the
access to the beach.
benefit of this type of resort in our neighborhood? What is the benefit to us?
So I would say that
We already have access to the beach, so that's not a benefit. We used to have
Well-
trails in the back here, which has now been destroyed.
wait, but that was private land, just to get that on everyone's radar. So technically,
But it's
that,
been blocked
But even
off for the
before
last
that,
2 years, which was
before
supposed to
that.
be a right of way. And you guys put the fence up there.
where, that's not the right, that right of way,
That's
just so
what
everyone understands.
the previous premier did a PR
Just-
thing
Just,
and did a road, supposed to be gazetted, it's supposed to be a right of way.
Just
access.
so- just so everyone understands how that road works, and it's, again, an important part of this conversation. We are building BP 40 along the length of our property in conformance with and under the approval of the NRA, how that's designed and engineered. So that land doesn't get designated as public land, as far as I understand,
That's not
until,
what was
and
done in the PR station.
again,
That's
I
not
can
what
only
was
speak
stated.
for what we've been involved in, but so you talk about nature trails and things like that. Yes, there will be a network, a system of trails, and it will function as a community as it gets built out or as the project is completed. But right now, everything from that fence east is private property.
Excuse me, I have a question.
Yeah.
By the way, just let you
No, wait, can I just, I'm sorry, I just need to,
We paid for that.
you did not pay for
The
any of
taxpayers
that work.
paid for that road. The NRA is the one that dug up that.
No, that was
Go back
all
into-
paid
Go
for.
back into your archives and see when I'm missing.
Yes.
The previous
No,
one.
absolutely, we can, and I know that only because I was using the financial data from that to work towards an estimate for the completion of the road. And that road was completely privately paid for. So again, that's the idea behind this meeting. I want to make sure that the information's out there. If you guys throw questions at me, I'm okay with it.
Can I
I feel comfortable talking about it, but I just want to have accurate information.
Through the freedom of information request that I did with regards to concessions given to developers, as far as I can tell, you've had just under $600,000 worth of concessions and waivers so far in this project. Can you tell us how much more of the $25 million concessions that you were given when this project first rolled out back in 2015? How much more you're expecting of that $25 million in concessions from the public purse?
I can't, and I will tell you why. And anyone who knows me for a long time knows that I stay away from the numbers. So I can get you an answer, please, by all means. Get me the question, you can send it to that info email, and I will get you the information that is publicly available for sure. I stay away from that, and being, again, totally honest with you guys, I stay away from the finances.
There's a couple of environmental impacts that I just want to mention. We've talked about it a lot and everything like that. As a resident living here and someone that skirts around at 4 o'clock in the morning, walking my dogs up Beach Bay Road, it's quiet and everything. I can come out my house and it's dark. Number one, there's going to be a huge impact of light. Doesn't matter what you say about your turtle stuff and all the rest of it, there's going to be light because it happens, number one. Number two is noise impact. Number three is there's also a thing in one of the CPA planning things about a gas. You guys are going to have a liquid petroleum thing as well. That's going to be on the east thing. Is that not some sort of hazard and stuff? I'm just.
No, that's an LPG tank, just like you would have propane burning for a stove or for your hot water.
The big stove you guys got.
Well, we have multiple stoves, but yes, so there are international guidelines on how those are installed, codes and all, and we will obviously have to meet or exceed those when we install. But I do want to talk about the lighting for a minute, because I think, as we've gone through this, we've worked very closely with the DOE. And yes, those conditions have been put on every one of our planning consents throughout the process, as they should, by the way. I will tell approving a development of this scale, the amount of jurisdictions that have involvement, the DOE, planning, and the multiple members and the multiple opportunities for comments throughout that process, it does work because the changes speak for it. But
heavy equipment coming up and down that road when it's not only the neighbors who walk up and down with their pets or children or whatever, it's the entire community around us, people all the way from Lower Valley, all the way into bottom town. This is a community where people are very active outside, etc. Is number one.
Is there no heavy, I mean, there are subdivisions that are taking place along Beach Bay Road
Not
now,
to
and
this
actually in the
scale,
last 4
Not to
years.
this scale. And I'd also like to know, is this gonna go on our peaceful Sundays? Mornings, how early in the morning and on Sundays?
No, our intent right now and our schedule is built around the building during permitted working hours.
Which
So-
is?
7 days a week.
Is that going to be an employee parking lot or guest?
That right now is, it's a parking lot. The intent is to, most likely, we don't envision a lot of guests having cars. I mean, most tourists come to the island don't utilize private vehicles. That would be employee parking, but Mandarin's also talked a lot about how they intend to really work with the employment pool to do ride sharing and things like that where possible.
Is there a road adjacent to it that's been gazetted cathedral, or is that just not true?
Again, it's outside the limits of our property. Any extension of the road to the east or to the west would be a decision that would have to be made by those landowners and the government.
So there isn't a road besides the parking lot?
Only the existing road, and there's a short extension, just the length of the parking lot to get into it. That's it. I don't think it's a full site. We can pull up
The parking lot, you know, when you come up Beach Bay, that where they head to the right, you can see Spray with the kid, all that area, that's gonna be a parking lot.
How nice.
Why did they rip down the whole vegetation along the roadside?
Why was the vegetation along the roadside torn down and could not have at least been kept as a buffer to the lovely landscape that has been created now as a barren land for we don't know how
Except for
long?
the 2 flash bombs.
Was it necessary
So
to
we did go
bulldoze
through
the
and-
whole, you know?
Well, a lot of that vegetation was actually, as I mentioned before, was overgrowth. It wasn't native vegetation, a lot of it was weed.
I'm
weed
sorry,
vegetation.
have you been here when the shamrock flowers come out at Christmas time along that
Party
entire
orchids,
road?
The air plants.
Work that we went into working with the NRA and CPA and DOE to
I've never seen
make sure.
it.
Is a buffer going to be put in
Yes.
to not see that parking site?
Yes, there's a landscape buffer on actually, I believe, all sides of the parking lot. We can actually, let's go back to the master plan. Yes. Yeah, and it's in the approved plans too, where there's a detailed landscaping plan that is included in all the packages.
I got a question.
So, sorry, so you mean that the road here to the left, of the traffic circle is only going as far as the
I believe it
end?
actually only goes in here. Because the remainder of it is not ours to decide to build. The extension of ED 40. So that's another thing, like we want to make sure that everyone has that accurate information. So we can build the road within the limits of our property. Anything beyond that is something that we obviously would love to discuss, but it's not our decision. Ooh, that's not good. Apparently that house doesn't work either. You know what? You make it like,
Well, those ones out there, they're the ones that sold the straight out.
I want to know what they're doing.
That one seems sad.
That's,
I still think they should be put on the spot.
so you can honestly say, with your hand on your heart, that we will not be kicked off the beach. That we have got access to any part of that beach.
Exactly.
Obviously, we're not gonna go and just go sit on your lovely deck chairs or whatever.
But we can, like, I can take my two dogs.
As far as I'm concerned, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean,
but that's,
yes,
As far as
yes.
I'm concerned, but not the
I mean, the reality is,
You won't be here when the hotel is up and running though.
that I would disagree with.
Right?
But
And, yeah, and the residents will then say, hey, you can't have your dogs on my beach.
Because I wanted to show you this, it's from the 22nd of October. It says that you will provide a 12-foot public access.
yes, that's the extension, that's the additional pedestrian access point that we were talking about along Beach Bay Road.
So you're
So
Can
the
you
12
see
feet is an
that?
additional 12, it's actually shown on here. So that 12 feet is actually, see this, there's two different boundary lines here. That 12 feet is actually an extension of this, and it goes all the way down to the water. So from an access standpoint,
all the
we,
way here, all the way around here.
there's no fences or anything, yeah.
So, and when the hotel is built, there will be no security guards stopping people walking all of this beach.
We do not intend to militarize this beach. I don't know what's going on down here, but we do not intend to.
You know what goes on in here? You go and have brunch at the Westin, right?
Okay,
And God forbid that you have your children with you, and they want to go and run on the beach, and they run on the beach. And guess what happens? The security guard comes and says, I'm sorry, but you're not against this hotel, you cannot come on this beach.
it happens, it's all the.
It's not on the.
Right?
I can imagine, you know, I can speak for what we're planning here, we're not.
Oh, by the way, our dogs love to swim at that beach. I'm just letting you
There's
know.
nothing that's gonna restrict your dog from swimming. There's nothing that's
Just
gonna
letting
restrict
you
you
know.
from swimming at the beach. I look forward to swimming laps with
I
you.
am just letting you know in advance.
I'm telling you that all of those structures that are out in the water, all of that is all within the public realm. All of the water is within the public realm. I do. I look forward to meeting you down there once we open.
Yeah, but we're telling the residents now, right? I mean, are they going to realize that, you know, Joe don't speak, and me with my two dogs, and the fisherman.
I've got 11 dogs,
You know,
I'm coming down.
I know, we've actually met up when you were walking out
It'll be a real tourist experience.
What about the fishermen that are on the water?
The multi-million dollars they're gonna pay to watch the fishermen.
I think it's amazing that the fishermen come and fish off the jetty. I think it's great. We've been down here when they've caught things.
You do,
It's
but
amazing what
you
they've
can,
caught.
you
do,
can
but-
buy their condo for
Are you
$4.5
investing
million.
here?
Who's been told they're gonna have this wonderful, private, exclusive place with this beautiful 7-mile beach view, which is not here, full of sargassum, which is, we can't get away.
And I wish
have
we
no
could all
problem
come
with
up
it
with a solution
And
for the
stuff, no,
sargassum
but the
together.
thing is, that's what life is about now, it's about climate change.
I
I mean, is it not false advertising on behalf of the Mandarin also to what they are touting, that people are gonna get out here?
And demand when they come.
I don't believe so, because I do think even with the 15, 20, 30 people that are on this beach, I was out here on Easter Sunday this year, hanging out with, I mean, the families that were camped out here on the beach were awesome.
Yes,
I
they're
with their
awesome.
dogs. It was
but
awesome.
your
And
$25 million
the-
purchaser doesn't think so, they have a completely different mindset.
But there's nothing that I can say to you today
I know.
that is going to resolve your concern.
Exactly.
I would love to. What I'm telling you is that the design and the intended construction of this development is designed in a way that we are not militarizing this beach. We
I
are
don't see
providing,
why you should be any different from any other.
because you know what makes us different actually?
I'd love to know.
There's two things. First, I ask you if there is another beach that actually has that kind of landform improvement out beyond what would typically be understood as the high water mark anywhere on island. So, and if there is, please, I'd love to know how they operate it, because that is public land. We have dedicated over that jetty, the $2 million improvement. That is not our
And
land,
guess who
and
used to
we've
take
maintained
care
it.
of it before you came, cleaning the beaches and
It was-
things? It was
it was
the
all about the
residents of this
reaction.
Okay,
town.
so the beach, but I'm
We
telling you,
kept it up.
but I'm
We
telling you,
cleaned it
so
up.
I'm intrigued, I would love to understand if, and you asked me why this is different. And one of the things that makes this beach incredibly unique, and it is incredibly unique, and I completely agree with you.
Not for much longer.
That, because that's what you're seeing elsewhere. It's
But
not
we-
necessarily.
No, I'm
We
saying
can
it
actually
was
read it on the residences at Mandarin Oriental, Brunstone and Facebook page. It says, the residences provide the privilege of privacy and the island's most exclusive location. And there is a
Which means
picture of
that
someone on the
nobody
beach.
that
That is an
there-
expectation of a private beach,
No,
sir.
no, it doesn't actually say it, privacy.
But that's the
Privacy,
impression.
it is to live in these
What
buildings. It's
is
gonna be
your
private.
Just pay $10 million.
what is your definition of exclusivity? Please explain.
Okay, can I interrupt? On that part, can we have this in writing? If we get something from you in writing explaining what this is, I'll put some of this to rest. I'm further down the road. I can sit and listen to the water in the evening. Well, I bought it. You're taking that away from me. What's the noise pollution going to be like from your hotel? Are you operating a water plant? What is your generators is gonna be on at certain times? What is the
Generators
noise
are all in
pollution?
acoustically lined
The restaurant
enclosures. The generators are in acoustic enclosures. The water plant is all within the building. The sewage treatment plant is an acoustically lined enclosure, so there's no, it's actually one of the things that the DOE fought so hard on and the water authority, when we did our first submission, was that we had to work with a system that was whisper quiet. So my goal would be that there's zero impact to your noise level.
But
And
the
that
thing
you
is-
continue to enjoy the noise of the water. And that, those are the engineering hurdles that we
The
have
trouble
worked
is,
with.
we're not gonna be able to do anything about it if those fail-safe don't work. What
I
can we do to ensure
I
those
think
things
I would-
are in line?
I would say, for one, the system is filed. So if we're not meeting the expectations and the performance of the system that was approved by the government entities, that's on us. That's something that needs to get resolved. So if the wastewater treatment plant, for instance, is making more noise than what has been approved, we can't just let that operate.
Is Mr. Saunders still here?
Just went out and waited.
Can we get him back in here, please?
Yes, because I want to change it.
Because, you know, ultimately, he's the government pipe that comes to us.
Yeah.
So it's his foot we gotta hold to the fire in a large extent to make you stay in compliance because you have given us zero benefit by putting your hotel here. You're taking away you're putting in the light pollution,
I
you're
don't
putting in noise,
But I think those are
you're
all.
putting in traffic. I can't let my grandkids run around like I do. Because
What?
of the
So-
traffic up and down. You are commercializing a residential area. Now granted, you asked a government granted. It is government that needs to be gouged, not so much the Mandarin.
That I.
We do need to get the Mandarin
Sorry,
to
you
be
did
in compliance with some of the things we want. But what are the things government is going to get back at us and give us in helping us get through this hurdle?
Yeah.
3 years of
Sure.
construction, we have to put up with that. Because even if I sold my house right now, where is another community in Cayman that is even similar to this with the rock, the height, the peacefulness, the out of town? There is none. You have effectively stripped us of it. So you get the lashes, but it's government's fault and they're not paying enough attention to help us or protect us. But we need some assurances from you because you realize you have a lot of angry residents.
So I think the assurances are in the approvals, and it's something that's very important to not let go, not ignore. The reality is there are systems, there are designs that are approved. You talk about light pollution. The lighting has been the lighting on this resort has been designed beyond any level of lighting that I have beyond any level of detail that I've ever been involved in. And, I mean,
We've
Sure,
used
it's not-
everything.
It's still
Can you
gonna
do
stand
an
out as an
illumination
it's still
chart?
gonna be.
I mean,
we've
it's hard
we've
to
submitted,
breeze,
we've submitted all that
interruption and
information, the
everything.
fixture types, all that information is publicly available. We can provide, yeah, I mean, that information is publicly available and we can provide it further.
Mr. Saunders,
Yes, ma'am.
how are government, you stand being for Beach Bay, mapping this, following it, hearing our qualms, our issues with the situation? I mean, yeah, we taking it out on the Mandarin because we don't want them here, but you, government, granted them. What is our protection and how are you gonna give us that?
Actually, first of all, there's one thing to be clear. This was actually done under the previous government.
It is done. It is done. You are in the hot seat to take care of us.
Hold on. First of all, I want to start by thanking Spencer. I met with him before. And one of the things that I insisted on when I was in opposition then when they started on was to come and engage the people of Beach Bay. That's the one thing that I beg more than anything, because at the end of the day, it's the community. I can speak to you simply as a representative, it's easier for me. Whatever it is that the majority of the voters of Beach Bay want is what it is I will support. So for me, it is very simple from that standpoint. Now, when I met with Spencer, I said to you from before, is that the way in which this was done is that first, people bought the land with a certain amount of zoning that was already there. They lobbied the then government to
Zoning
actually...
just changed the
No, finish, please. They then lobbied the government to basically change the rezoning.
Yeah.
When people bought their property here, they bought it with understanding that it was a certain zoning, it was zoned for residential, and it was zoned for, I think, low density, like condos and that kind of stuff. The zoning changed. Now, that was something I think that happened from 2015, 2016, even before the 2017 election, when that rezoning was actually done. It was actually done on the, I wouldn't even say the last government, even the government before that, where Curtin was a member, I think he was the person who actually brought it. So this was something where the zone was already changed. The issue that we have now, and this is where this government position is that first, we have a Ministry of Sustainability. We expect that any projects or any large-scale projects being done has to meet certain standards. Do or adjust or whatever, I'll be guided by them in that regard. Now, there are already certain laws that are already there. There are property rights, where anyone that have a private property, just as though you want the enjoyment of your private property, other people have the same thing for that too. You may not like the design that some neighbors will put on their house, but people have certain freedoms and certain things. What we want more than anything is to make sure that anything being done within the community finds a way to blend the community and work with the community. That is ultimately what it is that we're looking for. But we also got to recognize that with anybody else, with their land and what it is that they can do, they have certain rights to it. The question for us is finding the balance between property rights and what it is that can work with the community. Now, I can say this much, I'm a representative. If the majority of the people in the Beach Bay community say, well, as a representative, this is how we want you to go, so be it. What I wanted more than anything is for everyone to come and at least get information and then make their decision. Some people have indicated to be privately before, their full support. Some people have said they're on the fence. Some people what I don't want to say, because ultimately there are elements of this plan that will come before cabinet. I have certain responsibilities that I don't want to step over. I have any of my colleagues, because we do things at a cabinet level, and I'll take it at that. But for me, what we wanted more than anything is one, for people to have information to make an informed decision, to provide us with that feedback. And then we will make the necessary steps as a government. What I can say to you is that this is something that is on our radar. And again, I want to thank Spencer, because for the simple fact that this thing, as the old Caribbean people said, was started bad in the morning and in the evening. He has come down here, he's taken his licks, which is something I should have done from about 6-7 years ago before he did the rezoning. Because at the end of the day, that is the genesis of this.
How do we
Rezoning
stop
was done.
rezoning?
Well, what I can say is for us, yes, because we have a completely different approach in terms of our own Ministry of Sustainability. No,
Because I hear another big developer's coming in and trying to scoop up a whole big park behind there, because I tried to buy the piece of land behind my house, and I am understanding that whole thing is in a shilling store.
well, what I can say.
So what happens now,
Hold on.
when more of these are moving into our backyard, you're telling me the rezoning goes on without the residents knowing?
That's
At a cabinet level?
No. What I can say to you, there's no rezoning that has gone on since this government has been there. What I can say to you, and this is where the delicate balance comes in. We complain about people buying land. No one wants to complain about people selling them the land.
I
Because at the
agree,
end of
all
the
the
day-
preaching to the choir there.
At the end of
I'm
the
talking
day-
about the zoning.
I know
You
what
have
I'm
to
saying is, well, the zoning in terms of how that was done before, I can assure you will not happen under this government. That much I can tell you. The Minister of Infrastructure is here, and I specifically asked him to make sure he came to this meeting tonight. Jay is still here, right? Yeah. For this
Yeah,
exact
because
same reason,
we have to
because at the
speak
end of the day,
things.
like I said, there are still laws. So far, they have complied with all the laws, and in some instances where we have pushed back in planning, they have gone back, they have made the adjustments to their plans. I know the turtleness is one of the issues that got raised. One of the big things to me is the access to the beaches. Listen, I grew up in Norwood, I lived on the road. This is where I also come to for my beach. And it's the only beach that we have in this area too, so.
That's
the
at
reason
least,
why I'm
Right,
asking.
right,
No,
this is
well,
kind
for
of-
me, I'm just talking about it,
for
so.
me,
But then there's also the traffic issues, because listen, let's be straight now. There's about 184 lot development on, I think, the left side going out there. There's another 600 or something being proposed, down by where Mr. Nixon is. You know, I mean, this is already the second largest constituency. The east, once you pass Savannah downwards, is pretty much one lane traffic. Without the east-west arterial and without these different road networks going anywhere else, is going to be a challenge for us. But equally, what is also a challenge for the government, just to kind of bring into the wider picture, is that currently the scene speaking for the tourism minister who's actually off island right now, not even have been here. We have around 7,000 properties, 10,000 rooms, 20,000 beds. We have a situation where we do need to get more room stock on the island. That's one of the biggest issues for us. As it stands right now, the Airbnb market is also a big challenge for us. A lot of people have wanted the Airbnb business, and what that has done is taken a lot of rooms off the domestic market. What does that do when the supply drop down and demand keep coming up? Prices are going up. Right now, inflation alone from quarter to quarter is 11.2%. So there's a bigger issue here in terms of just the overall housing, room stock, and everything else. And that's part of the national tourism plan that the actual minister is actually looking at right now in terms of reviewing. We have always spoken about going east. There's another property, I don't speak of the term, think about a million square feet, I believe, is being proposed on the other side of the island, that island, in terms of resort. So it's about finding the balance, finding a way of making it sustainable. It's not going to be easy, but at the end of the day, I can tell you, we do have certain measures available to us. But so far, what I can say is that as per the law of the land, they have complied with everything so far. But at the end of the day, they still need to find a way to make it work. Because for me, first and foremost, I am still an MP. And what the majority of the residents in this area say is pretty much how I believe. And all I've said to these guys is what you should have done before. Come, give the people information so they can make an informed decision. I'm not going to put anybody on the spot. Some people have already expressed to me their help. Privately, some have been publicly, and I'll say to everybody, give me the information. But for right now, Spencer is here, ask him the questions, get what it is you want to get out, give me a call, and then let me know exactly what it is you want.
we are gathering,
But
and
the
thank you for that.
current-
But I would still like my rezoning question answered a little
I
more
can tell you what
clearly.
happened. Listen, the way in which it's set up right now, and there are some changes that the minister is actually looking at for planning law. I mean, simple things as bringing back, we can add on the 10% without even the planning is one of the things that being looked at. The way in which people can object to certain things is also being looked at. And again, so those are part of the wide issue, because I can tell you, that's where it started from.
How do
And
we
this-
get input into that though?
Well, I can tell you, when it does come up, I'll be the first to send it out.
But
Is
couple-
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go. Okay.
No.
A couple of years ago, there was a meeting. The people involved did not pitch up, and I think you were there. I was not there. I was working. But the government, the current government, were told about all Beach Bay's concerns about it, and nothing was done. This could have been prevented, or at least we could have got more input then, and it wasn't. So my concern is, you know what? Yep, this is going ahead. We don't have a say. It's going ahead. That's bottom line. You know, there's a lot of environmental impact that hopefully they can manage, but there's still going to be a lot of environmental loss. There's going to be a loss to the people that live here because this is not longer be Sleepy Hollow. I still don't understand why we have to have more big hotels like this when we could be doing a lot more eco-friendly kind of smaller boutique kind of stuff. Cayman is losing its green belt. It's going to be a concrete jungle.
Yes.
I don't have children. A lot of people have children here. What are we giving back to them?
So,
Look,
yeah,
one
my,
of the-
hold on.
One of the
The
things,
zoning and sustainability issue here is antiquated.
it is.
It is
and-
antiquated, and all we see now as we drive anywhere on this island is land being stripped apart and buildings being placed in places where they shouldn't be. The entire zoning of the island needs to be looked at, and the conservation of green belts have to be put in place before it's too late,
Well,
because
listen,
it's becoming too late right now.
I can agree to that, but one of the things, and again, I need the Premier to make an announcement because it's his ministry. What I can say to you, that one of the UN sustainability goals is to have 30% of land actually preserved by 2030. What I can say to you is that.
Why can't we do it now?
No, right now, we are,
At the rate we're
Hold on.
going at?
I know.
Hold on. Right now, we're around 11% in terms of the target. This is, when we came into office, I mean, over a year ago, it was at 8%. We have actually, if you look at all the cabinet extract, literally cabinet beat doesn't pass, where the government is allowed by land. We're still limited in terms of one, resources. Two, a lot of the land is still privately held, so we still have to go and literally buy or negotiate with people to actually buy the land. We'll move from 8% we started to 11%, and right now, for us to literally achieve the 30%, and I'm going to put it out here now, at some point, if people cannot no longer go out, the conversation has got to be, how far out can we go? And so this is all part of, what I can say is that the National Development Plan, which is required to be updated every 5 years, which is the 1977 Development Plan, has not been developed for a while. I can say to you, and the Minister can tell you right now, that is actually one of the things that the Premier himself has even taken on. Not just from there's a term that is kind of simple right now, but looking at overall sustainability model of the country, because I can tell you, when we do factor in many things in terms of our eco assets, if we actually spent money, brought a guy in to actually value our eco assets, which is actually valued at like over $2 billion. And right now, one of our main goals is actually to preserve those assets as much as we can. But at the same time, we got to recognize that people do have certain private rights, but at the end of the day, we are set, we are committed to meet that goal of the 30% land preservation by 2030, just as though we're looking to get the Paris Climate Accord by 2037. Those are targets that we have set for ourselves. So,
But there are things that could be implemented from now.
no, there are things that
Where people
hold on.
who own the land,
There are
I may
things, hold on.
say,
There are things
people
that are
who
being,
own the land, right? They go, they strip it first of all before they get planning permission.
They do.
Number
My private side,
two,
yeah.
number two, they don't even develop it for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, it just sits
well,
there.
what,
stripped.
it's kind of funny
Right
because
beside you.
just, I
There's
don't know,
gotta be
hold on.
a deadline put into say,
Hold on.
it's gonna
What I
strip
can
it
say
out,
to you-
build on it within 6 months and that's it.
But I can say to you that things are being worked on. I can't comment on it, I know it's being, no, I can tell you for a fact that things are being, sometimes I wish to God I paid more attention when the Premier brings the different papers. Maybe I spend more time sustainability. This is one of the ministries that we actually created under this government. And what I can say to you, and one of the reasons why I don't pay much attention to it, the person who's managing it, which is the Premier himself, is passionate about it, is leading it, is driving it. I don't need to pay much attention to it. But what I can say to you is that there are certain metrics that have already been set by him. He's working crazy like crazy to get to those metrics. And Sandy, when I was here, Premier on Mandarin access, and so please ask me questions on that, because I don't want to speak about something that's outside my constitutional responsibility, but I can say to you it's being worked on. Listen, I just want to leave this one thing.
Yeah.
I have 3 kids. Nobody wants a concrete jungle. Let's be clear with that. And one of the things I've always said is that while we can remember what it is that we inherited and what we had, at the end of the day, what we're going to be remembered for is what we leave behind. I used to ride my bicycle from down here to that very little cargo place, and I had a blast. I want my kids, and hopefully next year being 50, for my grandkids. So if anyone honestly believes that any government, at least this government that I'm a part of, is sitting down here, just one word around us, approving everything willy-nilly. Minister J can tell you the amount of fights we have in cabinet just to even people building docks. I mean, because all those coastal permits have to come to cabinet.
Look what's happening to South Sound.
You know? Well,
the government is
hold on.
allowing these monstrosities
Hold on.
to be put
But
into
I asked the
another
question again.
very quiet
I
residential
asked the question
area.
again. Go back and check to see how many coastal permits have been approved for South Sound since this government came in. Now, I can't speak, and this is at the end of the day why the elections went the way it went, because people got fed up from the cruise port initiative and all that kind of stuff, and the one that disregard the environment. This is a government that is committed to the environment. Now, we can't go back, a year in office and just think that we can simply eradicate or just remove everything that is not before us. But what we can do is make sure going forward, the things that cause the problems that we have today don't continue. That is the commitment I can give you. I can't go back and tell you that based on the law of the land as it stands, then, and people complying with the law, that they have certain rights to their private property. We can't take away from them. And just as though you want certain rights to your property to the same extent as other people. I can tell you, I have a problem right now in my own family where people are trying to sell land that we don't want us to sell, but they just sell them and sell it to the guys. And we're saying, well, we can buy from you for this, they're like, no, I can get more. These are problems that everybody wrestles with in their own family, trying to keep land within your family.
Yeah, but that is where the zoning and the permits and the planning comes in.
Well, I can assure you
So
on
that
the zoning
if I
side,
own land of 5 acres on South Sound, for example, that I will know before I buy it what my rights are and what they're not. And if Cayman Islands says to me that this area, you can only build 3 stories, if you're gonna buy the land, these are the restrictions before you buy it. Now, it's your decision whether you're gonna buy it or you're not. If it's not good enough for you, then don't buy it. Go somewhere else, find another location. This is the stuff that's not happening.
I cannot agree with you more. And what I said, the way it was done before, I completely don't agree with it. But what I can say to you is that will never happen under this government. I'm not part of it.
So I have a comment for you in line with all that has been said before. Part of the problem why it's looking like it's going to be a concrete jungle, and by the way, in brackets, one of the reasons why we don't like your project, right, is because it is an affront to the environment. If you wanted to put a resort in here for the Mandarin, why couldn't it have been something a little bit different instead of a high rise? You don't have to comment because it's already passed. I'm just saying.
No, it's actually
right?
important. I think it
Right?
tags
So-
on to something that
but-
the deputy premier said.
Yeah, but hold on,
that,
right? But
because it's
hold
important.
that thought, and then you can tell me
Okay.
after, right? So one of the things that I read, and I was going to write to you, and I'm going to write to you because I have pictures of something else with a turtle nesting beach and an issue which I am going to write to you about. But an issue that I find that is just flies in the face of everything that is Caymanian is the aesthetic of each area. complete disregard, right? 10-story here, 10-story there, 10-story there. We don't
Exactly
even
what I'm
recognize
saying.
anything anymore, right? And I think that, and planning board, all they do is just like, yeah, it checks the boxes in the regulations. You can tell that regardless of what it might look like in the environment that they want to put it. It's completely nonsensical, and that has to change.
And we
Does
changed that
that,
last year.
you look at that
Have you seen
picture
the
and
makeup?
I
you
have-
think, does
Have you
that-
seen the makeup of the planning board now?
No, you change the board,
So,
but
Minister-
what I mean, but what
Yeah.
I want you to also
Hold on,
change,
hold on one second.
While he comes in, why does it have to exceed the tree line?
right? What I want you to
10
change,
stories, it's exceeding the tree line
yeah,
in this area.
what I want you to
The tree line
change
in this area
is
about one
that
Thank you.
the regulations for each area should fit the
So I wanna-
aesthetic
what I was
of
gonna say
each
is that-
area.
One of the important things about this, we want to talk about sustainability, and sustainability in general is low impact development is based on the idea of reducing your footprint, right? So you want to have the smallest amount of coverage. That's why we have things in zoning controls like lot coverage and permeable and impervious materials. So if you were to say, take the program that can financially be delivered on a 67-acre parcel of land, right? So if you took the program that is allowed by zoning and distributed that on a 67-acre parcel of land, your sustainability footprint would be so much worse than actually creating a vertical element. And I think that's what was being discussed is if you go out is sprawl. Sprawl was the basis of my thesis that I wrote in grad school. The basis of my master's to fight sprawl. Sprawl is uncontrolled growth.
Air is also free.
Can I just
Jeremy,
make
I
my
just
comment?
want to
Can I
close
just
one
make my
comment.
comment because I was gonna go?
So
They mentioned planning.
I just want you to know personally that why, again, we're like this. Like when you started to talk about, oh, we're all about transparency and all of this stuff. Not even everybody's here that disagrees with this, that have been fighting it, because they know it's beyond, and it was just gonna be hearing what it was. Years ago, this should have happened, you would have had less angry people.
Yeah.
So everyone is still angry. They're angry with you, they're angry with government, everyone's just over it, they're upset. A lot of people are like, why waste my time? They've been fighting it. And I will say that certain people here really fighting it and taking time from work to go to government to fight it. And we were all in Savannah when they were coming to talk to us in Lewis Lake, so we don't trust anybody. Actions speak louder than words. My thought is we will see what happens when it's done, because it's all on tape to see that we have the right. So just understand that. Like, it's people, that's why. We've been bullshit thrown at us, and no one cared, actually, because, and again, people that have been in the neighborhood for years, no one knew that the zoning, like, no one was announced. And this has nothing to do with you, but people like, oh, we sent, remember when we said, oh, we sent stuff, you must know, just crap. So there's anger, okay? And just know, again, I feel actions speak louder than words. So hopefully,
totally agree with you.
when we come down to the beach, there will be a security guard and we.
And I'm gonna tell them to call you.
No,
Honestly,
what also bothers us is that it's not the first time we're hearing all these things. We've heard it from all of the developers, the benefits it's gonna have for the island, how good it's gonna be for tourism, how much money the government's gonna make on staff, how much the duties we're gonna make, et cetera, and how many Caymanians are gonna be employed.
And that's
But
not
never
happening.
happens.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm asking, what makes this development, because you know what, if you really are different, like you're saying, maybe we would be more accepting. But because we've seen that every single development ends up being the same, and every promise and every benefit has been said to government in order to accept the development, turning around with what I'm saying is, I'd like to know what program time and funds are going to be put towards training Caymanians in this particular hotel?
It's a fair request. And what I would say, and tagging along, let's move forward with the communication as we've established tonight. I'm fine. You can email me whenever you want. I'm being totally honest. Email me. If I don't know the
Careful
answer,
what you ask for.
it's fine. Honestly, I have it on other projects too. But actions do speak louder than words. And I totally agree with that. And there's a reason why we, as a company, as the partner that is working to execute on this project, have been around for 43 plus years. We're family owned and operated. Our reputation also speaks for us. We put a lot of effort into that, and that's why I'm here, and we're here as a development team. The partners are here.
But again, there's people here in this room that blew us all off.
Yeah.
And they all know who they are. And so it is frustrating because again, like they were saying, the beach access was off the cliff. So there's been games being played, and you know that was done because they didn't want locals on the beach, 1000%. There was absolutely no doubt in my mind that was the reason. So again, yes, access speaks louder than words, but again, there's people that none of us, I can guarantee, well, the people that oppose and are concerned about this residential neighborhood, they're the ones that are like not trusting certain people, and I'm assuming I can speak for many that are like, I don't trust because of.
I remember I was there, he said, the law says that we only have to give access to the sea, which meant that we had to be like penguins and jump off the cliff. Okay?
No,
Just saying.
We have.
You can offer an apology for that, your company, not you personally, because it's a bite. It's disrespectful to the community,
What?
saying to go jump off the cliff.
I don't think, I would
It wasn't
hope
you,
no one
but-
said go jump off.
Oh,
the cliff.
yes, they did.
Well, I will tell you, no. So,
It
you know
happened.
what? The plans, as they're submitted and approved, they'll call out what we discussed tonight.
No,
with all
yeah.
that enhanced
Yeah,
access.
that was changed
And I think
after
that does speak louder than, this is memorialized. Those are in the plans approved, that's what's being done. And I think that's what we wanted tonight to be, that opportunity to get that information out. As we all discussed, there's
But
a,
I almost feel like this should have happened before the realtor stuff too, like it really should, it's been such a hot topic in this community, like to feel like we were important for once, like to, bring it in and say, you know what? What happened? Instead, it was the open house to the realtors and they got Yeti bugs and they got all this stuff, you know what I mean?
and that, I agree, and I will tell you, this is not an excuse, but it's something that we've been dealing with, which is just having the ability to have a meeting like this where we're all in one room, mask or not. We've all been adjusting to what the world has become. I don't disagree with you, which is also why I made the point of saying that the website that we will be developing with the information, the relevant information about the project, is completely independent of any sales and marketing website. It is not a pitch. It is, it's pure fact based on what's going on with the project, and we'll be getting that out. And we'll make sure that we'll make sure that the news outlets and all know when that website is up and running. I've had, believe it or not, had an issue trying to find a web developer. If anyone has some.
I just want to add one thing. I feel bad for Spencer to some extent. Because the genesis of this meeting was that we were in caucus and we were told that the developers of Beach Bay wanted them to meet with the government. They flew in on their private jet. They were out the way to Rome. And my response was, before they set foot inside there, we'll talk to my people in Beach Bay before anybody comes inside this room and talk to the government. Because while I do recognize that certain things happen before this government and even before the last government that was there, the people in the community need to be brought in on this. And again, like I said, I really feel bad for Spencer because he has inherited and he has come in, and I've met with him and I found him to be sincere. For people who know me, might won't join church. I say what I say. If people like it, they like it, and I be very, very blunt and frank in terms of what I just said. And I felt bad, but like I said, they flew on a private jet, came in, was from New York, they were rolling from, it was in the waiting room, and that because that meant because they needed to come and have.
How long do we have?
No,
How long do we have to respond to you before that
listen,
happens?
by all means, I mean, I don't know, it's not on the agenda for them, so we'll start parliament tomorrow, but what I will say to you is that any concerns you have, please send them to me directly. My numbers have not changed, the email address has not changed. Don't not change is that more people actually reading them sometime more than myself now. Where people are chipping and start reading some emails to make it easier. But at the end of the day, first and foremost, the views of the majority of people here is what will determine treatment by the government in terms of moving forward. That's
Too
what I
late.
can say. Oh, no.
It's too late for this one. This
No,
is not.
listen,
Minister
I will say
Saunders,
this, hold on, I will say this much.
May I just say one, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're saying this government, the last government, I just want it to be recognized that this community is not a transient community. Most of these people have been living for at least 20, 30 years, which have outlived the governments that have come in and implemented changes of zonings and this and that. So I think a little bit of compassion and respect to these people who lived here is very, is due.
Listen,
And
I
you've
completely
taken
agree.
care of this
I think you
community.
also need to respect, you also need to understand who you're voting into office. I think this is what Mr. Saunders is saying without, I'm not trying to put words in his mouth, but every single person here who's a voter, when we go to the polls or not, we're making decisions.
That's right.
And when those governments screw us over, we can't then blame a subsequent government and say, oh, you need to respect us. It's the past governments who didn't have a
Hold on.
respect for us.
I want to say one thing though. I want to say one thing. Taking the tourism, the impact of tourism out, the one revenue line of government that is substantially down from previous years, even 2020 pandemic, is actually planning fees. Planning fees is actually down by 50% the first month of this year compared to previous year. 50%.
We're not saying
Oh, no,
don't develop, what we're
no.
saying
The
is
point that
be
we're making, the
very
point that we're
conservative
making,
in it.
no, the point that we're making, and the minister can tell you, we have arguments between those on the planning board. I mean, if you look at the makeup of the planning board as it stands right now, I mean, we're not surprised that the revenues are down by 50% in terms of planning. Between the environmentalists, the developers, and everybody having their seat, it's a matter of finding the balance. And you know what? I don't mind that number being down as long as what comes out from that board is something that reflects the sustainability that is going on. There's a reason the Ministry of Sustainability was created. It was never there before. There's a reason for it. Because we recognize these exact same problems that led to this can't continue. That is why we have that ministry.
I just want to make a comment for future developments, because obviously this one is too late. We live outside the 300-foot boundary, but we have no rights. But if a development of this stature, it should involve everybody in the community, not only the select few.
I can assure you, if you listen to the minister's speech,
Sorry,
that was
I
one
don't
of the
have
things.
time to sit.
No, but I'm especially, that's one of the things that he actually spoke about changing because it limited the amount of objections that he could have had.
Yeah.
I mean, and again, like I said, these are the kind of issues, whether we want to, I don't like it as much as anybody else, but these are the kind of things that we need to change. They were there for a reason, and people came in and lobbied the government changed them.
Yeah.
And now we need to go back and undo some of the stuff that previous government has. That's the beauty of our system. We can reverse these things now. Some things you can.
Made 115 million in stamp duty from this project, correct?
According to the slides.
Well,
That's what we were told tonight,
According
right?
to the slides.
well, here's what I will say.
No, that's not a question.
No. Here's what I will say.
person.
In over a year in office, the amount of concession that has passed my desk as Minister of Finance, the developers, I don't know what we have to do this, I can tell what left desk, is zero.
I'm
What
not
I
saying
can
about
say
the
to you-
concessions. I'm saying
What I'm
that,
saying is, I'm saying concessions are the new one.
I'm not talking about concessions. I'm
What?
talking about sustainability.
Yeah,
They're saying government's going to get 115 million in stamp duty. That, how sustainable is that? How long term? When a project like this goes down with the sales that they're expecting, the huge buildings, why can't government require such developments to at least on an annual basis, for as long as the buildings are being in use, passed down from Mandarin to Hyatt to whoever, can government not get at least 5% revenue from their profits every
I
year?
can say with the trouble, I can say with the thing with that one. I look at, well, first part is the tourism accommodation tax, which is 13% of the room tax.
I'm not talking about the taxes. I'm talking about sustainability, to take the break off of Caymanians trying to sustain government, because planning fees should not be counted as a sustainable revenue, because you're gonna have to keep planning requests going in to keep that revenue up. We only got so much mileage. What is going to be sustainable for the future, 1 second, sir, so that it takes the weight off of us? We don't get no concessions, no time. And as you know, our people are selling it off left, right, and center because everybody is suffering and we don't see a future. They're gonna come in, Caymanians is not going to be able to live on front desk wages, bellboy wages, and the wages that are going in. That you're gonna get foreign labor that'll come in and do it. But they're in transit. They're not here like us. What can revenue, these buildings are gonna be here for how long? How many years of gaining off of their revenue, a percentage, would take the weight off of our backs?
Hold on, let me answer this question first of all. 60%, more than 60% of the revenues that government generates annually actually come from financial services. Yeah, let me tell you.
They be customs now, duties?
Hold on, 60%. Actually, more than 60% is financial services. One of the biggest challenges that we have, and I can tell you this much, is we have a consumption-based tax system. And the question is this: do we switch it out to a direct taxation system? Now, I can tell you, I am fully opposed to direct taxation. I am completely against that. And
I'm not talking about changing the taxes, I'm talking about changing what developers need to look at when they're coming here to do this. This is just for them, this is not for us.
Hold on. Let's be clear. I mean, I'm going to use one major condo development along West Bay Road. That the stamp duty that created from those condos alone, I can say to you, 2019, the Ritz-Carlton home tax alone was more than the entire stamp duty made from that one thing. If there's anything that you want, is investment that can give you revenues every single year. The advantage of hotels is that it actually does that. I mean, prior to 2019, we were making $36 million a year, almost $40 million a year on tourism accommodation tax alone.
Where is that money directed towards?
There is directed to education, it's directed to healthcare, it's basically directed to every single thing that it is that government provides, because there are services that government have. Police is a non-profit, the courts are non-profit, education is non-profit, the healthcare is non-profit, so the departments that actually generate revenues have to pay for the departments that are not. So we have free schooling, and I tell you what, when I look at the challenges that we started this government, we started with, we were expecting a $98 million deficit, is what was the forecast. When we arrived in office, we found out 35 million of stipend payments was omitted. So we started off with literally $133 million hole. And I can tell you, despite putting in free lunches for kids, extending healthcare for seniors and everything else, reducing certain fees on senior citizens, that $133 million deficit for last year is only $15 million. For this year, we should have lost $58 million, is what the forecast was when we came in. The budget had us at $20 million, and I can say to you that right now, at the end of April, we're at $200 million surplus. And for the next 8 months, unfortunately, those are going to be the lean months now, where we literally have to keep our purse strings tight, because in the first quarter of the year alone, financial services comes in and literally dumps a ton of money on us. We now have to sit down and manage our cash now for the remaining 9 months after the first quarter financial services fee, and pray to God that customs actually deliver. The one line that is actually still down in revenues is still customs. Customs is still running behind budget. The duty that we charge on alcohol is still running behind budget. Fuel is still running behind budget because we still have less tourists on the island. So there's a loss in terms of economic activity. What I can say to you, and this is one of the statements that the Premier will be delivering on, is that there are certain measures that will be coming in over the summer months that is going to offer some reprieve to a lot of families on the island. Now, again, I know the statement is being done, as I was asked my own input on it, and I will leave the Premier to actually make an announcement in Parliament. That's going to be coming on this week. But there are things that we're looking at. What I can say to you is, we're also looking at massive investments on the renewable side. We have over $200 million a year leaving this country to go buy oil. When the sun is up here, the same sun is shining everywhere else, we need to do a lot more in terms of renewables. This is the time to do it. So there is a lot of different stuff that's being done, and unfortunately for us, we have a very big agenda at a time when the world is still recovering from a global pandemic. People are still surprised that we're still running surpluses at this point, when just about everybody else is struggling. So we still have certain limited things, but we're doing the best that we can. There was a time when the government was running $160, $170 million surpluses, and I can tell you, I don't know where the money went, but you know what? Neither did you. That's the reason we have been voted in. Our job now is to manage it. Like I said, we do recognize that there are things in the past that has happened. There are things that we wish I could go back and I wish I could less chocolate too, but I can't.
I have a lot of chocolate.
Susan, that's nice. Come on,
I have.
Michael, talk
I'll give it
to
to you, I'll give it to you.
you.
What is being suggested, Minister, is that if, I don't know, to take 1 or 2%, whatever, which is coming from the tourism revenue, and putting that towards sustaining or purchasing green belts and doing the parks or planting more trees or whatever that has to be done, because I don't think tourists would mind, because they're coming here because they think it's beautiful, it's this and that, to have some of what they're contributing goes to the preservation of the island, not only in the operations of the island, but the actual preservation.
We actually got the environmental protection fund where a portion of both the cruise tax, the project tax and everything actually goes to the environmental protection fund. And we have actually been using a lot of fund from that to actually go and buy up a lot of green spaces. That's one of the things that we've been doing. Like I said, when the Premier came and said he wants to get that land to 30%, I mean, we looked around the room and we said, you know what, 30% land preservation by 2030, it's going to be expensive. You know what? Let us see if we can get it at least 25% by our first term. So we have been going out, we have been buying land, and if you look at the cabinet extract, every single week, you see where government is going to buy land. It's a lot of actually, hold on. I don't want to, hold on. There is actually, hold on. What I can say, and again, I don't want to spend anyone's thunder, because ministers come and they do their own stuff, and I do have inside information. But what I can say to you is, there's going to be some land coming up for sale very soon. Just watch this space. As a matter of fact, when the announcement is made, I'll make sure I don't want to take another minister's name.
Minister, it appears that you're the one who needs to be having the meeting.
Yeah.
Right?
But I'm
I'm sorry, but I had a
Sandra, we were there in Savannah.
notice.
We were shunned. I live here, I'm coming home, 3 ministers are leaving this house.
Only because
And they were saying it was an embarrassment that we didn't show up, because we were not allowed to show up. So that's a little contradictory. So that's why we have very, very solid history. And I lived in this neighborhood for almost 25 years. I'm one of the first ones to move in. I'm even here before this guy. Right, Charlie?
Where do you live?
Right here, at the end of the road. I moved here in 1996.